A Dive by J.T.N. Wing. What is going on in your mind? Have you ever tried to follow its disorganized and seemingly random happening upons from one thought to the next when in isolation? Maybe you're like me, and things start out very surface level, gathering mostly recollections of the day you're having, recent interactions, stresses and worries for the future. If you're also like me, then it doesn't take long for things to get difficult to monitor. Flashes of images, some from memory, others from imagination, begin producing themselves along with random words, quotes, said by voices you barely recognize. This experience isn't scaring you, yet. You're familiar with this. While difficult to monitor, you can recognize that it isn't impossible to trace and even explain the origins or motivations of some of these images, voices, and words you're hearing and seeing in your own mind. It would be a tedious effort that in our daily hustle and bustle doesn't immediately promise a steep reward for having done so, but you're fairly certain that it can be done. What's beneath that? Is it even beneath? What direction would the depth of our mind take us? Depends on the outcome, maybe. If positive, we'd consider it an enlightening experience, maybe. If negative, a nosedive or descent might be more appropriate. This, however, is only a perspective of the experience after having had it, not necessarily what it is, right? What it is, I can only call an experience for now. A consciousness of things generally beneath our everyday examination. The room in our mind with all of the loud machinery, dried, oily substances sticking to the pipes, gauges being periodically checked by men in industry coveralls, and industrial stairs and walkways around all of these machines with the little holes in them. We only vaguely understand that our very being can be understood in this place. But we also, or at least I, understand that some of the things I don't want to know can be found here too. Maybe I find a new perspective, an invigorating eureka moment that helps me view life through a brand new tin of gratitude and understanding. Maybe I make peace with an event that I hadn't realized has been influencing the characterization of my decisions and attitudes towards certain instances that only generally relate. That, or maybe I find a memory. Maybe I find a memory I submerged out of shame. I say submerged because of the outcome, but I could be wrong. Maybe I've actually granted it so much power that it has me submerged. Maybe I've placed myself at its mercy, which I can't even say unwillingly, because the feeling and thought of removing myself from its grip sounds torturously unbearable, to the point I've almost convinced myself that doing so would be fruitless. Maybe I find a desire. Maybe I find a lust that I've not addressed or given any forethought to due to years of suppression of my actual self, in order to be molded into this socially acceptable and competitive man that I've become. A lustful desire that doesn't endanger anyone, but rather would explain a handful more of my motivations and what I choose to surround myself with in social circles and relationships. Down, along, or up this path, I always run into the detective. I hate this man. He's always curious, always trying to incriminate me for my own thoughts, always measuring my cognitive activity next to the most reprehensible of human examples, making me feel crazy, weird, wrong. He must be a stranger, clearly one who has either no invitation or has now been seen as imposing. I'd imagine he thinks of himself as a morality compass, some sort of beacon of justice. I find it interesting how often my deepest or highest regions of cognition reject this man's ideals. His purpose can't be all bad, can it? Is it so wrong to have a socially engineered balancing program uploaded into your psyche to help you steer clear of becoming an inconsiderate, detestable slime puddle of impulse and blood tissue? I'm honestly not sure if the thought came from him or me, but given the situation, I guess it would have to be both. So maybe I find these things. Maybe I find a bunch of crap that I'm either going to appoint importance to or uselessness. Like finding crumpled up receipts in my pant pocket while organizing the laundry. A receipt can be a lot of things, and nothing, all at once, just like us. It can tell me where I've been, how much I've spent. I can write a brilliant idea on it, regrettably blow my nose with it. They could tell me my wife's cheating on me, or save me from a tax audit. The value of it is dependent on so many variables that if someone were to write all of them out, with the used paper you could more than likely cover the distance from wherever you are to the point where Voyager 1 took that famous photo of Earth suspended on a cloud of dust, barely visible in the vastness of everything else that coexists in just that still image. Or maybe I see a dream that I had the night before in better detail. Maybe I feel the emotions that I felt when I found myself immersed underwater, maybe a meter beneath the surface in the middle of an ocean. Maybe I can feel the cold that started to set in, not from hypothermia, but confusion. The jarring realization of my sudden plunge into chaos. The storm stirring the waves above with a violence that stabs the soul with an agonizing fear. Then, as if my mind were to say, there's also dessert, I hear a thunderous pound from the sky, and the lightning off in the distance sends a light that shows me the silhouette of an enormous whale that I'm sharing the depths with. Only for a flash can I see it, but afterwards, it was as if I could feel it, hear it making its way towards me. I could feel its carelessness in feeding and being never mindful of my existence, with its only intention to swallow everything in sight whole. Let the digestive tract ask the questions. I could feel the fear of this suffocating me, eating at me from the inside out, bracing for an impact that couldn't possibly be worse than my own instincts, burning me alive with the daunt of this dark and unavoidable death. Maybe I revisit that, and choose to see the ocean as the vastness of things I do not understand in this life. The storm representing my negative attitude towards these things that only make difficult more so. And the whale a representation of things that I cannot avoid or resist. In this I could find serenity, or I could find agony. The fear of death never truly subsided for me personally. I only have my rationalizations that keep me at bay from moment to moment, so that I may enjoy this precious piece of time that I have. Still, at the end of the day, I'm going to cease being what I am, forever. I can say I'm ready for God and the afterlife, but I'm not able to honestly say these things with truth. All I've known is this existence. This meat shell on a rock circling a gas ball is all I and anyone else have ever known. Before this, I have no idea what I was doing. After this, I only have faith as to what transpires. I do hold on to the sentiment that I am very fond of my life, and even though I don't recall my existence before this one, it led to this one. Based on that, I have more evidence to say that things will work themselves out in a positive manner rather than negative, and I prefer to hold on to that. Essentially, it's all I have. I think this might be what introspection is, but I'm not sure. I'm aware that I could easily just Google its definition, but I prefer to keep identifying what my recollection is sure of and what it isn't sure of. How much of what I know do I actually know? How much of it have I just been told, and how much of it exaggerated or completely false? With how limited our time on this plane is, could I even discern it all? Or would that also be fruitless? I enjoyed drinking cow's milk just fine until I learned, or was told, I can't recall, that it actually doesn't offer any strengthening properties for your bones. Since then, I've come to view it in a way that I view candy or soda, and even self-diagnosed myself with an intolerance to it. I may not be wrong in my diagnosis, but it surely wasn't as deliberate enough of an arrival to said conclusion to say that I have any certainty whatsoever in the matter. I could cast the same skeptical eyeglass on my entire library of knowledge and experience. I'm certain that I'd find things out of order, but how much do these corrections matter? Another receipt in the pocket. How valuable is truth that has no purposeful application? What if Jesus was actually a group of people and not one person? What if King Charlemagne always felt like he was born a woman? What if Genghis Khan didn't really exist? How much of what we believed to be true has been shattered in this way and yet barely grazes our recollection but in trivial conversation? Do I even bother having faith in what I know? I've been told that there's a massive black hole in the center of our galaxy. It's theorized that its existence quite literally alters reality and makes physics null and void. With things like this in our existence, why do we act so smug and so certain about anything? Women love to see confidence in a man. It assures a sense of security, or at least I think it does. Isn't the black hole whose event horizon can theoretically turn you into a grasshopper's cup holder evidence that this song and dance is absolutely meaningless? Not to love and be loved, but to project oneself as knowing and assured. This isn't nonsensical? Of course not, the detective would say. Why wouldn't he? He's trying to keep me from going off the deep end, entertaining nihilism. However, if I'm going to occupy this reality with others and be forced to interact with them by my own instinctual being, you can be damn sure I'm going to have my criticisms. That's all they are, just criticisms. How arrogant of me, though, having only been here for a barely quantifiable period of time next to the age of existence, to find the gall to criticize practices that predate my very species. Oh well, if it's all meaningless, then who can judge? Ozymandias had everything you could want and has nothing you'd want now. If I woke up tomorrow as General Gaius Julius Caesar, I'd put down the sword and shield and go write some more books. To hell with the Republic, they'll fail whether I get stabbed in the back or not, so I'd prefer the latter. None of this matters to our sun who's set to eat us in a couple 100 billion years, or the Betelgeuse star, or the apocalypse, or Ragnarok. Not only am I not sure where I read those things, I'm also just as uncertain that I even really am. This would be the perfect subject matter to bring up the next time I answer that number I don't recognize, and it just so happens to be a debt collector. Beetlejuice should definitely buy me a few more weeks. So I'm now at the point where I'm making existential and philosophical leaps based on very limited knowledge that may or may not even matter. Beyond this point, I'd imagine, is the room that would actually make me prefer the company of the detective. Diving in here would most certainly and accurately be seen as a descent in retrospect. He and I, like Virgil and Dante in the Divine Comedy, cannot simply enter and leave without cost. This is an airless space, void of hope, deprived of rationality and civil decency. It is the wild, untamed and naturally kept, without intention or purpose. This place just is. This place perfectly captures the meaning of darkness. Darkness is just the absence of light, nothing more, nothing less. But darkness is such an inconvenience to our livelihood that this place has to be submerged and kept away, so as not to interfere with our hamster wheel and labyrinth of reality. In here, there are no emotions. There's no color, no meaning. There is only what is. This is why isolation is the worst torture known to man. The mind is a flame that can consume itself into nothingness. Once the oxygen runs out, that's it. This is the foundation of the most lawless instincts, where boys on an island find a boar's head and bring it to life. Children find this place with absolute ease. They aren't tainted yet with our worries and cautious mental gates, so they see nothing but possibility and desire in the emptiness. I'd even argue that our creative space is sharing the same circuit breaker as this dimension. I'd theorize that this place is our one connection to everything, the nothing. Nothing is an unnatural element of reality. It really shouldn't be, just as we shouldn't be. So our minds can't grasp its concept. This is the number one dividing itself in half forever. An alligator's lack of regard for the well-being of the antelope, tied with T.O.N. 415's lack of consideration for our existence. This is where you discovered the very idea that things just are the way they are, after the world hurt your feelings. It is what it is, a quote that was born here. As the detective and I ascend from the nothingness, we likely travel one by one through every space that led us down this road. Jackets blood-stained from the experience like an exposure to radiation that hopefully won't develop into a cancer and have me trailing off in front of my manager while he's reaming me for my attendance, contemplating how good of an endorphin release it might be just to get in my car and drive off. The return will always change your perspective, if you're like me, that is, which may or may not even be, obviously. This might be why I can't take certainty serious. It's almost a ridiculous idea to me, telling of one's ignorance. It could, however, just be me that is ignorant. It's possible that everyone knows something that I don't, and they just haven't communicated it to me in a way that I respect enough to retain. Possible, but not likely from my perspective. How can these things be pondered upon or known by them, and it doesn't plague them the way it does me? How could they see what I see and it doesn't drag them the way it does me? They pursue knowledge so aimlessly, and I'm willing to bet they haven't imagined the nothingness that omniscience offers them. To know all is to take the fantastic out of every and any possibility. A tiresome existence that is truly fruitless, in every sense. So much so that is it any wonder why God would have created us and given us free will? Solomon asked God for wisdom to lead his people instead of money and honor, and this pleased God. Of course it would. to be chosen over the things that don't matter, like riches, your own understanding, etc., by a being that has the option to simply not do so, what could be more valuable to an all-knowing, ever-present deity such as he? If you believe in this, he gave us power that nothing other than we have, from what I can tell at least. My government might know more than I do on that matter. Knowledge might be overrated, along with absolute truth. I don't want to fully understand that noiseless darkness within my mind, and while I appreciate all that God has given me, I do not envy him. I'm okay with mortality. I ascend from the darkness through philosophical chaos, past the fear of the vast unknown, dropping the detective back off somewhere around my ego, because he insists on walking the rest of the way, and arriving back to the surface level with a sense of content, because at the end of the day, it is what it is. Maybe. This has been A Dive by J.T.N. Wing. Thank you for joining me. Stay mad.